Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Joy, would you please call the roll?
Hamilton?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Boyer?
Yes.
Ledger Kalin?
Yes.
Hammes?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. The council, are there any additions to this evening's agenda or changes? Okay. Now we'll move to our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the September 23rd meeting. We have a resolution for,
That's supposed to be October 14th. She got to change it.
That's from
So you
last.
didn't have to bring it up.
Yep. October 14th, 2013. Then we also have a resolution approving Scott Connolly as Assistant Superintendent at Wastewater at I believe it was $1 an hour raise. And then approval of claims in the amount of $607,424.01. Any questions regarding those consent agenda items? Not entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Hamilton, second by Boyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Next, we have public appearances, and we have an award presentation. Who will be presenting that this evening?
Ed Morrison.
Ed Morrison. Yes, I recognize him. How do you do, sir?
Good evening. My name is Ed Morrison. I'm the loss control representative for IMWCA. That means Iowa Municipalities Workers' Compensation Association. We are the work comp provider for the city of Fairfield, the county as well. And it's my great pleasure to recognize your city by presenting the Best Practices Incentive Award. Out of the 506 members in IMWCA, we've given this award out 12 times. You have to meet very stringent requirements to receive this award. And to further elaborate on that, I want to introduce Mr. Bob Shepard, our IMWCA board member and city councilman from Washington, Iowa since 1999. And he can explain this further and do the presentation.
Thank you, Ed. I think the person to explain exactly what the best practices is Ed. He's the one that's been the driver that helps you guys reach this point. On behalf of the Iowa Municipal Workers' Compensation Association Board of Trustees, which is what I'm a member of, and the Iowa League of Cities administrative staff, I offer my sincere congratulations to the city of Fairfield for earning IMWCA's Best Practices certification for the year 2013-2014. One of the things you get is this, and I want you to notice 2013-2014, there's other blank spots here for continuing years. This award is presented to Fairfield for successfully implementing practices to proactively manage its workers' compensation exposures. By meeting the rigorous requirements of the Best Practices program, the city helps not only itself, but all IMWCA members accomplish the shared goals of keeping employees safe and workers' compensation premiums stable and affordable. My own thought is the most important is keeping our family safe, which is everybody that works for the city. It is my pleasure to present this check for $1,000 to be used for further development of your workers' compensation cost containment programs. Congratulations to Fairfield, leading the way in protecting the most valuable resource, our employees. And Mayor?
Thank you very much, sir. I would like City Clerk Joy Messer to receive this on behalf of the Safety Committee and the work that she's done to organize for us. Go ahead, Joy.
Come on.
Congratulations, Ken.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming tonight, too. commitment, your work, your dedication to do this. I always tell people the opening statement of the Ocean Manual states employers are required to provide a safe and healthy work environment for their employees. Your safety committee has stepped up and done the job for them. That's outstanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments as far as background. First of all, I know that is shared with all of our department heads that are here tonight and all of the good work that they've done internally within their department, also with our city management. And I also want to thank Mr. Morrison because I know it wasn't too long ago that we had some tough love conversations with the city that he delivered, and we really took heed and I think responded very well, and tonight brings that all to fruition. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for attending tonight and for the award. Next, council, we have a request from the Fairfield Area Chamber of Commerce for their lighting dedication ceremony, which traditionally takes place on the Friday after Thanksgiving, where we light the square, Christmas City. And there are some requests for some parking blockages on the square. I think you all have a copy of the request. Is Nancy or anyone here from the chamber tonight? So I think what we'll do is this is something that we really appreciate that it is organized by the chamber, and we'll certainly approve this in light of the great tradition prior to the Christmas season. So as you can see, the request is to block parking spaces on the south side of Central Park between Main Street and Court Street, on the north side of Burlington Avenue for wagon carriage rides around Central Park for the lighting dedication ceremony.
Your Honor, there was some talk after Oktoberfest. Are these horse-drawn carriage rides? There was a concern
I believe they are.
Yeah, the concern was the waste that the horses sometimes leave on the street. That if somebody is going to organize an event with horses going around the square, that maybe we should ask that they didn't clean up said waste after the event. Okay. I don't know if that's some policy we can put in place in this short notice, but
We already have a poop scoop.
we do.
We have a poop scoop.
We have a law
We have a law.
For dogs.
for dogs.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the tradition is.
Horses leave quite larger.
I see Dave Neff's here, and Dave, we had some live horses on the square for Oktoberfest. Did you do your cleanup, or did we?
I will.
You'll plead the fifth. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I'm just curious.
Just curious. If
We need to have a separate committee to take care of this in the future. I sometimes overbook myself on that weekend. I was not able to. Yes, it did not get cleaned up by our committee, so I would have to say it's probably.
It's something that we would need to. All right. All right, so
It's great fertilizer.
Councilman Halley, are you making that a condition of approving this without any representation from the chamber?
I am kind of representing the chamber, so I don't want. I just say maybe informally as a request.
I mean, you're a measure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure somebody would appreciate it.
So you're part of the committee that's trying to get this.
Well, I'm on the board.
Undertake you're on the board, so maybe that would be a good job for you.
Yeah,
Fair enough. All right.
Yeah, so I would recommend that not be a condition of the approval, and that we ask you to go back to the chamber and have them demonstrate good
I would move
citizenship
for
by cleaning
approval
the
of
street.
the lighting ceremony and the blocking of parking as requested.
Moved by Hamilton,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Next, council will move to our action items and ordinances. First, we have a new cleaning contract that Kevin, if you'd like to speak to, you're asking for approval.
Yes, Your Honor. This contract, it was TL Cleaning LLC, who, of course, had been responsible for the cleaning of City Hall, Park and Rec facilities, and the library for quite a few years, I think 14 to 15 years. So that's what the contract's about. It'll be a 5-year contract with after that initial 5-year period, it will be automatically renewable. Of course, there are outs for both parties. But we'd ask that you approve this.
And it is $60,000 annual,
Yes.
paid in monthly installments.
It is.
$5,000. Okay. And they have done an outstanding job for all of those facilities in the past. So.
I'm very pleased to see it being recommended again. I certainly would move for approval.
Great. Thank you, Martha. Moved by Rasmussen.
I'll second that.
Second by Boyer. Any discussion? Now please call the roll.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Boyer,
Yes.
Hammes,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, council, we have a contract with Pathfinders RC&D, who really specialize in grant writing, among other things. And there is going to be an opportunity for new CAT grant, Community Attractions and Tourism grants, opening up in January. We would like to be able to submit a grant at that time to support the pool and recreation projects. This is something that we had planned and kind of quasi-budgeted for within this. It would certainly help the project out a great deal at this time. I know in conversations with the executive director there, they have traditionally funded these projects through CAT in the past, both pools and gym recreation projects. So I think there probably is a good chance that we would see some funding, because we do have a strong sense of support already from the private and the public sector. We would need county participation in this, so that would also be pursued. But we are asking your approval tonight of an agreement with Pathfinders RC&D to put together the application for us.
I know Pathfinders has always done a great job. I just had one question. That is there kind of a limit to the number of hours?
Not really. It's a $50 an hour contract. It's kind of a standard consulting arrangement. We're not sure about how many hours it would take. We are going to have some extensive involvement from volunteers as well as staff to, help get information together and to kind of push the project along a little bit quicker to try to save money. But it is a bit open-ended in that respect. But on a level of how many hours on such an application, it's going to range anywhere from around 20 to 60 hours. It's kind of a wide breadth. But depending on how much we do in assistance of them, will that be?
I think 60 is a little high.
I do too. That would be if you did everything.
I think that... I know at one point when we did discuss this with them, they did give us an estimate. We didn't have a fresh estimate, but it was somewhere in the 25 to 30 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say.
I guess it would be nice that one way approach that, and even if we're doing it informally, to just do an assessment.
I think Pathfinders has done a number of the CAT grants before. I think they'll probably breeze through it. I think it's a matter of us deciding what elements are going to go in. I don't believe that there's going to be a lot of time spent.
And many committee members have already expressed a great interest in working with them to help on some of the footwork. So.
Yeah, and again, I got just saying informally, if they can kind of say, okay, we're at 25 hours. How much more do we got to go?
Yeah,
and kind of help.
I'll check with.
It'll probably be fine.
Jane McMahon had this.
We have lots of history with them, so I don't really see a problem. But again, it's always nice to kind of keep a check and balance there from the committee.
You know that Jane McMahon had a conversation with Deetra months ago, and there was an estimate. We didn't get that ahead of the meeting, but I'll ask that again and forward that to the council in an email.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? I'd first entertain a motion to approve.
So, second.
Moved by Boyer, second by Hallie. Any other discussion? Now please call the roll.
Boyer,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ledger Kalin,
Yes.
Hamilton,
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to a resolution approving tax abatement for new construction at the Sweet Spot by JCS Freeman, LLC.
Yes, and this would be work that was related to changing the Sweet Spot from an outdoor dining to an indoor dining that was done most recently. I would recommend the brisket.
Move to approve.
Is that the approval of the brisket? Sorry. Who was that? Was that Tony?
Yeah.
Moved
I'll
by
second.
Hammes, second by Ledger Kalin. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, council, we have the third and final reading for vacating of the alleyway between the First Methodist Church. It's an east-west alley. It's a half block. Again, that's for the purpose of paving once that is actually conveyed to the Methodist Church. We have had no new information on that City Hall has received. Has anyone received any objections to vacating alley at this point in time? Okay. This being the final reading, I'll declare the public hearing open and ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak for or against. Not seeing anyone, we'll declare the public hearing closed and entertain a motion to approve from the third and final reading.
So moved.
Moved by Hamilton, second by Hammes. Please call the roll.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Hammes?
Yes.
Boyer?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Ledger Kalin?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll follow that, council, with a resolution authorizing the conveyance of the real estate for the alley to First United Methodist Church.
So moved.
Moved by Boyer,
Second.
second by Rasmussen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next, council, we have the first reading of our deer ordinance, which is an amendment. And I know we're going to take some time with that tonight, so we will have a public hearing, but we want to give a little bit of background, hear a report from the committee before we open it up to the public hearing. Again, as I mentioned, this is an amendment to the existing ordinance that we have, which prohibits the hunting of deer in the city limits, and we are going to thereby propose to amend this. And the amendment will talk about 3 different areas within the city limits where the proposed hunt would take place. It also refers to the management issues of licensure, guidance by the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and proving proficiency in archery. Those would be the general areas of amendment. The language would reflect each of those. And again, this is an ordinance would go through 3 readings. The proposed time for this hunt that is technically within the city limits would be the last weekend in December and the first weekend in January, so it would be over 4 days during that period of time. Now, this issue came to the council well over a year ago, and I think the committee at first had proposed a number of methods to disincentivize the feeding of deer and attracting of deer in the community, and that was also established by ordinance. But we are approaching the deer hunting season, so there are a number of residents who approach the city again and through the Public Safety Committee to, again, consider this hunt. So I'll ask right now the committee to report on its most recent meetings and the vote that brought this to an ordinance. Jessica?
So basically, yeah, several residents had brought it to our attention that we needed to review it again. It had been reviewed prior to me coming on the council in 2012, and it was sort of tabled because there wasn't anything that could be done about it at that point, or no decisions had been made. And so several residents brought it to our attention, and then we had a public safety meeting in October to discuss options or which direction we wanted to go, and the committee unanimously voted that a trial deer hunt would be the best way to go at this point because of the overpopulation and the number of accidents and things of that nature that are affecting the residents. So, and the harm that are coming to deer within our community because of they get hit, they don't immediately die, they suffer, that sort of thing. So that's how we got here.
Okay. And Jessica, the vote coming into your committee was 2-1 with Councilman Revelinsky voting against. Was he?
No, our committee was unanimous.
Oh, yours was unanimous. Okay. I know Councilman Revelinsky is not here tonight, and he voted no to even put it on the agenda for this evening. So I know where he stands, and he apologizes he couldn't be here tonight. All right, thank you. Next, ask Chief Harvey to report, because I know this is being coordinated through the police department. Chief, would you also go over the designated areas and describe where they are?
The designated areas, the first one is directly behind Obie Nelson, the outdoor swimming pool, the portion that the city owns. The second area is directly south of the baseball fields at the middle school. And it basically runs from the road that goes back leading to the baseball fields west to basically the subdivision that's back there. The third area is the feeder ground, which is located directly south of the fairgrounds and directly north of Jefferson County Park, which is already a hunting ground area. I can tell you that, because we went to pictometry school, courtesy of Kevin, that in the feeder ground, the closest building is over 1,400 feet. The trail is 1,446 feet away from the southern boundary. Obie Nelson Park, the dog park is probably the most used thing during the winter, and the walkers in that area. To the dog park, it was 446 feet. The concerns with the middle school won't be in session during the first weekend. It's on a Saturday and Sunday, so school won't be in session those days that we do hunt. Right after we met with the committee, we had Lieutenant Smith, who's an avid bow hunter, call residents that were immediately adjacent to the area, so down Fillmore, Maine, Libertyville Road, Libertyville Drive, and the Dogwood subdivision area. We contacted 156 people. 144 of them were pro deer hunt because of the vegetation issues, the safety issues, and the overpopulation, and we had 12 no's. Colin's here. He can explain the proficiency test.
Colin, would you do that and also describe where the hunters would be placed and what are the restrictions on the method of their hunt?
Yeah, as far as where they're going to be placed, we really haven't discussed that yet.
But they will be in stands.
They will be in stands. It's got to be an elevated stand. Most of them that you buy at the store are at least 12 feet high. And then we're talking about trying to implement a 20-yard barrier where you can't take a shot past 20 yards. That way, from your elevated stand, your arrow will actually be at a very steep downward angle, so there's less chance of a skip or a ricochet. What was your other question?
Let's see. No, I think that was it. Yeah.
The proficiency test, we basically plagiarized from Ottumwa, who has an in-city deer season. You shoot 10 arrows at a 8-inch bullseye target, and you have to hit that 8-inch bullseye 8 out of 10 times to prove the proficiency. Most vital areas on a deer are going to be 9 to 10 inches, so that 8 inches gets you well within the vital area.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that we did was we contacted, I had a meeting with the Centerville police chief a couple days ago. He said that they started this program 3 years ago. They had the same concern, same safety concerns, people not wanting to shoot Bambi, kill Bambi, things like that. He said the first year it was very controversial. He said the second year that they did it, it was a handful of people. And he said this year it went through without an issue. Most of the towns that we've spoken to, we've never had anybody report any injuries as a result of the bow hunting. An in-town deer hunt. I mean, we have cities like Des Moines that are very heavily populated that are doing deer hunts, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and we don't have any reported injuries.
Okay. Council, any questions thus far for the committee or for the chief or for
I have a question.
Officer Smith?
The area behind Obie Nelson Park, how big of area is that? Is that like an acre or 2 acres or 3 acres?
Guessing, I forget, we did it on pictometry, I forgot. Mel was there. I want to say like 3/4 of an acre. I don't know. It's a heavily wooded area, and it's not like we're going to be sitting on the fringes of this wooded area and shooting out toward the school, shooting out toward the houses. They're going to be shooting in toward the wooded area.
I mean, on the map, that was the only area that I was concerned about because it looked like a smaller area.
It is a smaller area. However, it's a heavily wooded area.
And the dog park is close to that. Would we close the dog park? Well, you did say 400 feet. Excuse me, 400 feet. And obviously, if we're doing a 20 yards, it's not going to be close to there.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I provide just a little more background how we got where we got? Because I was on this committee, I think, before Jessica, maybe before Connie, when this first got brought up. The first time someone recommended in-town deer hunting, I laughed at them because I imagined someone running through someone's backyard with a bow and arrow. I didn't realize that it's actually a DNR-sanctioned program for deer management. Department of Natural Resources manages deer in 2 ways. They don't allow hunts in areas where population is low, and they do allow hunts in areas where the population is too large for that area. Unhunted populations can double in size in 3 years. Deer are by nature a prey animal. We, as humans, have removed their predators, and so they reproduce rather quickly, and when they can eat whatever they want and they're safe in a certain area, they will frequent that area. These programs, as was mentioned, have been in place in other cities for many, many years. There have been 2 accidents reported in that time. Both were hunters falling from stands. Maybe they fell asleep. Maybe it was wet. I don't know, but no one has ever been hurt by an arrow. The hunt works to get the deer out of the area in 2 ways. One is thinning the herd. We're only hunting does, and that's basically to cut back on the reproduction. Secondarily, the hunt, if it exists for over 2 or 3 years, teaches the deer to stay out of that area. Jefferson County Park has had a hunt for many years. They have fewer deer in the park as a result of allowing hunters in the park. Those deer may be now within city limits as a result. If we don't do anything, then this population problem will continue. And while I'm not a fan of hunting, wouldn't hunt myself, it's come down to what do we do, and these ideas of non-lethal options, we ran out of options when we looked at that. We had a citizen who said she was going to look into a high-tech option that used some sort of radio frequency or motion detector technology. Never happened. Was never followed up on. I've talked to the DNR rep several times, and there are no other options with deer. They will continue to come into city limits. They will continue to run into our cars and endanger our population and destroy our property. The council is tasked with protecting public property, protecting public health. And when it comes between human health and human well-being and deer health and deer well-being, I'm going to side with humans every time. So that's where this came from. We did not invent this program. We are not making this up. The setbacks that we're using are recommended setbacks. The protocol we're following has been used by other cities successfully. That's the history behind this. There's been a lot of disinformation spread around. When people have emailed me about this in objection, when I then send them this information that I just reviewed with you right now, most write back, "Thank you for telling me that. I feel much better about this now." So if we can stick to the facts when we have our public hearing and talk about what's real, that will help this conversation move forward and then help the council make a good decision.
The other thing that Greg said from DNR is Jefferson County is able to get 2,150 deer tags. We never come close to filling that limit in Jefferson County, year after year after year after year. So
did the DNR address the disease issue with deer when you talk to them?
No, the wasting?
A lot of times when deer overpopulate, too many in one small area, they become infested with disease, which then it kills them in much bigger numbers also.
And there's starvation in winter. There are a lot of problems when the deer population gets too large. One other thing, in terms of the flyover as a way of having real hard data, I talked to our DNR rep, and he said it's a snapshot in time. The flyover takes about an hour. So you know what the deer population in your city limits was that hour of that day, but that doesn't tell you what it really is. He said better data comes from your police department. How many calls are they getting of deer vehicle collisions? How many complaints are they getting from citizens of deer eating the vegetation? That's the best data to go on in terms of making a decision. Secondarily, the helicopter pilot who he used to recommend for the service passed away. In his long history of his career, he's never crashed his helicopter once. His son took over the service, crashed the helicopter twice this spring. So he's not able to recommend that service to us at this time. A helicopter crashing over Fairfield would not be a good thing.
Of course, those could have. There's any number of reasons those crashes could have happened. We're readily admitting that, but
he just doesn't want to recommend that service. So he would have to find someone else who would provide that service. Would then hold everything up. The population would get bigger. If we do nothing, I mean, we got to be honest. This trial alone isn't going to help. This trial is to see if this will work, and then we can do a real hunt next year.
I'd also just like to add there were a few things that were brought up last spring or last winter, other ideas, and practically speaking, the cost was basically prohibitive to the city. I mean, it just wasn't practical.
Hiring an assassin, you mean? The assassin method where we would hire
Well, no, but that was brought up, but that wasn't practical, and I don't think anybody was for that. But there were some other devices that were mentioned that were cost prohibitive.
And I think that the people that have had their vegetation eaten time and time again that have spent thousands of dollars aren't really excited to spend non-lethal means to get rid of this problem at this point. I think they've had enough.
And I guess my feeling is that I agree with Michael. This isn't the end-all solution, and I would like to see us move forward on not only this, but other solutions that people want to put in place, that private citizens can fund on their own. I've probably, if I had to count them, everyone who's contacted me either by phone or by email, it's really split. So it's a very difficult decision to sit up here, especially when you don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I see all sides, and I can, empathize with both sides. So to me, I think that we should move forward with all solutions at this point, at least for this year, and then we'll have to deal with it again probably.
Thank you, Council. I think at this point we'll open it up to the public.
The only other thing I have is that one of the proposals that Colin had is that when we get checked in, when they have to register the deer at the end and get it verified down at the firehouse, one of the things that they're going to do is count the number of deer that were running with the deer that was shot. So that way we can kind of say there's a herd of 20 running with this one deer. And that way we can kind of get an idea of how big the herds are, or the groups of deer that are running at the time that one shot.
And I would really like to stress to Colin and whoever is hunting that any missed shot or that's just an injury, to do absolutely their best to find that deer and make sure that it's put down. We don't want it to end up in somebody's front yard or backyard. And so I expect high ethics out of the hunters that are there.
And that's a matter of the shot that they take or the shot that they don't take, Colin?
Yeah.
Right.
And, things happen when people are hunting. Things happen. If an arrow hits a twig, you could have a bad shot, but you have to do everything you can to recover the deer that you shot. And that will be done.
And it's not like they're going to be shooting one deer after another after another. They shoot a deer and it gets hit. They have to go track it before they can come back, retrieve that deer, or make every viable attempt to retrieve that deer before they go after another one.
And if we've got to run through every backyard in town, we will find that deer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding on that.
Okay. So I'd like to open up the public hearing, and I know that there are going to be opinions for the hunt and against the hunt. Since this was brought to the city council from citizens who were for the hunt, I would invite them to comment first. And yes, please come up to the microphone and give us your name and address. Ask everyone to keep their comments as brief as possible, and if someone else makes your point, you're welcome to make it very quickly, but if you've got a different point, we'd rather hear that.
My name is Levon Hostetler. I live at 808 South 7th Street here in Fairfield. Last year, when this issue came before the council, there were many rumors and false statements being circulated. My hope was that by now the voice of reason would prevail and people would realize we have a serious problem with overpopulation of deer that will continue to get worse since there are no natural predators. Some have said that the deer population in Iowa is down, and while that may be true in some areas, that certainly isn't the case here in town. When people report that deer come right up on their porches and decks, or that they have counted 17 in their yard at one time, it would seem like it was time to address the problem. Numerous towns all over the United States and here in Iowa have had successful accident-free hunts for a number of years. For those concerned about safety, I quote from the Iowa City website, "Evidence indicates that urban bow hunts pose very little risk to people. No evidence of injury to humans appears in any of the programs reviewed," and they did review a lot of programs. Another town reported that their recently completed hunt had been remarkably uneventful. To the best of my knowledge, there is no documented evidence of anyone being harmed in any way in the state during an urban bow hunt. Ottumwa implemented their hunt in 2005, and as of May 15, 2012, they had harvested a total of 612 deer, and their hunt continues on a yearly basis. I have a friend who lives in Ottumwa, and since the hunt started there 8 years ago, she has never once seen or been made aware that a hunt was ever going on. People are not going to be running through your backyard with a bow and arrow. This is not the way an urban bow hunt works. For those who are concerned about safety issues, I would ask, what about the people who are hurt or killed each year in car and deer accidents, not to mention property damage that results? One insurance agent here in town said they average 2 to 3 claims a week for car deer accidents. And while most of us are well aware of the damage that's caused to our gardens, landscaping, and so forth, due to overpopulation, there is not as much awareness of the damage overpopulation does to the environment. There was a very interesting article in a recent issue of the Wall Street Journal, and while it is lengthy, I would like to read just one paragraph. And I think my paper fell on the floor here. This was from an October issue of the Wall Street Journal. The cost of deer damage in the United States continues to mount, from collisions with motor vehicles, overgrazing in forests, habitat loss for smaller animals, damage to crops, gardens, and landscaping, as does concern for Lyme disease. In August, 3 ecologists with the Nature Conservancy, the Habitat Protection Group, asserted in an online article that over the short to medium term, deer are now more destructive to forests and woodlands than climate control. Now, others have suggested that injured deers will be running all over town, crawling into people's backyards and dying. And that is why the department or the committee is going to be extremely selective about who they issue a license to, so this won't happen. Since the police department is the one drawing up the ordinance, I think we have every reason to believe that they will see to it that the proper guidelines are in place to ensure a safe hunt. For anyone to suggest otherwise, I feel, is an insult to the police department. I, for one, trust their judgment and support this hunt, and I would ask you to do likewise. I also brought with me the most recent issue of the Iowa Hunting Guide, which lists all the towns here in Iowa that have initiated an urban bow hunt with the help of the DNR. Now, there are many other towns that have done it just as Fairfield is proposing, with just a change of the ordinance. This book just includes those that the DNR has helped. And anyone who would like to see this, I have it with me, and you'd be welcome to look at it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to address in favor of the bow hunt? Okay. All right, then I'll ask anyone else who would like to address against the hunt.
Connie, Mel looked up. It's 2 acres. Obie Nelson is 2 acres.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Rosenberg, 302 West Adams Avenue. And and I'm not in favor of the hunt in the city limits. I acknowledge there's a problem, and the problem needs to be addressed. I've had deer in my backyard eating my okra and my vegetable patch a couple years ago, which was the first time that it happened. So I know there's a deer overpopulation, but I feel that it's really important to address this in a way that is safer than I feel the in-city hunt is. I'm talking as a mother. I've had children that have gone through that place in Obie Nelson, behind Obie Nelson Park. I used to walk back there with my children, with walking dogs and everything. And it's actually, yes, it is very wooded, but it doesn't mean that people don't go back there. In fact, I checked with the police department today, and there really haven't been any surveys done that have shown what the foot traffic is in any of these various places. So my concern is that you have children, that go into these places, that walk around, explore. I mean, what child doesn't like to explore a wooded area? And, a parent might tell a child not to go in a place when there's hunting, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a child is going to do that. You can't be on top of them 24/7 all the time. Kids need to be able to explore. And I just feel like it's really important for our population to have a place, our children or people that just even like to walk, that they can feel they can go in and not have to worry about any hunting. I know the city of Keokuk did not want to, I think they did it one year, but they did not want to renew their in-city hunting the following years because of the liability concern. And I think that's a really strong consideration for our city council if there was, God forbid, an accident, which could happen. I mean, this is not fail-safe, technology. I mean, what if some child, got hit by a bow, a ricocheted arrow or something? I mean, how would you feel, having passed an ordinance that allowed this to happen or, made it possible to happen? So I feel the liability is too great. Now, I understand, I think in an article you suggested coming with other solutions. So I've got 4 that I wanted to suggest. One is this concept of immunocontraception, which is contraception for does. The National Institutes of Standards and Technology, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, they partnered with the Humane Society at a place in Gaithersburg, and they found that, after a trial and error, this was a number of years ago, they found a way to do this that was 72% effective in reducing the number of births. I've got some information here that I'll leave with you. In terms of the deer that come out onto the street, there's a technology called Deer Deter, and it's by Jaffa Technologies, and it's a kind of technology that sets up a sound that keeps the deer off the roads. Now, I'm sure that is pricey, but you may be able to do something with a trial with this company in order to set up a trial where they would fund it, and you would be able to use it that way. Someone suggested to me, I had sent out an email to my list telling them about this meeting tonight, that why not plant food plots outside the city to lure deer and hunt them there? I think they do that with mourning doves. The DNR does that with mourning doves, and why not do that so that you actually have the hunting in a place where you know you have a better shot. It's not city land. You have a better chance that it's not going to be kids there. And then I don't know. This is just an idea that came to me. But if we're trying to give the deer the message that it's unsafe to be in an area, why couldn't you simulate hunting in these 3 areas, maybe with blanks, and maybe perhaps scent some deer, like a dead deer, like scent it in the area, so that you could do that on an ongoing basis. Maybe get like some Boy Scout troops or 4-H clubs or what have you to go in and have like a weekend where they do this, and this way you're basically getting the message to the deer, and they may not come. So those are just some ideas that I wanted to present and let you know.
Thank you, Diane. Appreciate that. Take another comment.
Hi, my name is Christine Boxerman. I'm at 2060 Emerald Lane. I just want to confirm Diane's suggestion about, instead of killing the deer, have something that will sting them. You hit them and it kind of hurts them a bit, and it will dissuade them from coming to those areas. I don't think it's necessary to kill them, to dissuade them by stinging them, and they don't like it. And so I want to propose Diane's suggestion. That's what I would agree with.
Okay.
And also I have a question. How involved is the training that these people, that these archers are going to have to get their license? I know they tested. If you need a dozen, but maybe 8 are okay, but 4 are just not quite good, they're the ones that could really injure the deer. How detailed is the training? That's a question I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colin, would you address that, please? It's not actually a training. They're actually they're going to be giving a proficiency test.
You should, practice a lot. You should. If you can shoot an 8-inch target 8 out of 10 times, that shows that you're proficient.
What distance are you going to have
yards.
that? 20 yards?
Yep.
Okay.
The distance of the recommended shot.
Yep.
Right.
And how often? You're hunting. How long have you been hunting?
20 years.
Have you ever heard anybody doing that?
No.
Came close?
No.
Have you ever been close? The people you hunted with are the same people you're going to be doing this with?
Correct.
We're looking at like six to 8 people max in the total in these areas. It's not like we're going to have 30 or 40 people in these areas.
And Colin, there certainly is an investment for a bow hunter to have the right equipment.
Correct.
Could you, I'm not going to go out there on a weekend and pick one up and do it. First of all, I'm not going to be proficient, but second of all, can you tell us maybe an average investment for a bow hunter?
Just getting into it. It depends on what type of equipment you're buying. You can spend anywhere from $1,500 to as low as $200 or $300 to get into it. But most of the people that we've talked to about doing this hunt take it seriously, and they have the higher end equipment.
Thank you.
And you're putting your own money out. You're the ones paying your deer tags.
Correct.
To be fair, we're talking about people who on average are carrying $2,500 worth of stuff into the woods with them, who at 80% from 20 yards away can hit a spot that's 8 inches wide. So they're not novices, to be fair, that we're talking about. These are people who are enthusiastic practitioners of bow hunting. So it's a short season bow season anyway.
And most of the guys that we have talked to, if they would be mad at themselves if they only hit an 8-inch target 8 out of 10 times from 20 yards. They're pretty serious about it.
Okay. Thank you, Colin. Anyone else like to comment? Let's get the new folks in first.
I want to apologize. I'm getting over a really bad case of bronchitis and pneumonia. came out tonight because I feel really strongly about this. My name is Nikki Weaver, and I was involved last year with the Safety Committee. And I did present some proposals, and I would like to correct some things that were stated tonight. I'm kind of in an unusual situation in that I have 15 years of experience with wildlife management in California. I had state and federal licenses. I worked with the federal Department of Fish and Game, the state Fish and Wildlife, the animal control, the sheriff, the police, just about everybody. In a city of 3 million people, believe me, we had a lot more problems than Fairfield did. I operated a hotline where I took 2,000 calls a month. Okay, I saw everything. Only once in 15 years was lethal force ever considered. And that was when there was a population of coyotes who were extremely aggressive and were jumping fences and killing dogs and attacking small children. And even with that serious problem, through extensive public education, that problem was resolved with only a couple of coyotes having to be killed. I truly believe that this issue has been brought to the forefront and expedited without due diligence being done on the part of the Safety Committee. There were a number of alternatives introduced last year. I made myself available to the Safety Committee for follow-up. Some of them may have been expensive, although grants were available. Some of them were not expensive at all. I think that there are some that are so ridiculously simple, but Fairfield just hasn't explored them. For example, in California, it was extremely effective to put the urine of the predator in an area where there were too many animals. In this case, don't mean to gross anyone out, but mountain lion urine is quite available, as is the urine of other predators of deer. It's extremely easy to spread the urine in areas where the deer go. And they don't, when they smell that urine, they get out of there. This is Mother Nature resolving the problem, not through killing, but through natural means. There's another method that we used to deter deer and other animals from munching on people's yards. It's called the scarecrow. I did mention this last year. If you go to Amazon.com and type in scarecrow wildlife deterrent, you'll find it. It's one of the best sellers. It's relatively inexpensive. It works great. It's a high-powered stream of water that is motion. It's motion set off by motion, and it shoots very accurately whatever object is in the premises, and it deters everything, not just deer, because I've actually found that bunnies do more damage to my garden than deer do, and so do raccoons, in some cases possums. So you're actually dealing with the problem and the level of the problem, not just going out and shooting deer that might live on the other side of the town, but you're actually dealing with that actual garden and any predator and any nuisance animals that might come through your yard, no matter where you live. Deer might be on the other side of town, so how is that solving that problem? If you actually install that device in your yard, you're going to find that the animals won't come through. Okay, so those are just a couple of suggestions, of which there are many more. At over 15 years of experience, taking 2,000 calls a month, I got to be pretty familiar with what worked and what didn't work. All right, I wanted to mention that one of the things that concerns me is we really don't have any real data as to what overpopulation really is. I'm concerned about the anecdotal situation here with people saying, well, we think that maybe there's too many collisions, but we don't really know where the collisions are. What if they're on Gear Street or in Vedic City? Are those where most of the collisions are? Because hunting in O.B. Nelson Park isn't going to help someone who's crashing in off of Gear or on Vedic City or whatever. I think that I would like to see more statistics as to exactly where the collisions are. If there's a certain area in town where maybe there needs to be better lighting, that's going to be the solution to the problem, not necessarily killing deer on the other end of town. I think I'm a little disappointed that the council didn't ask the police to have better statistics, because this issue came up last December. And we really, at that time, we really didn't have an accurate number, and now we're 12 months later, and we still really don't have a real accurate number of how many the collisions, where are the collisions. Is there a certain area of town that's maybe could be identified as a high collision area? We could look at other solutions. Okay, I wanted to mention that last 2 weeks ago at the city council meeting, there was a gentleman here. He's not here tonight, unfortunately, and I think that before you make any decisions on this, you need to talk to him. He is the Olympic archer.
Matt Stutzman,
right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
He mentioned to me in the lobby that he came to argue against the ordinance. He said that he is a hunter, and he believes that amateur hunters doing this is a very bad idea. He said if you're going to do it, you need to have someone like him do it. And as much as I am opposed to this hunting ordinance, I agree with him based on what I know, what I've seen on the internet. I urge every city council member to go home tonight and Google deer injuries from arrows, deer injuries from bow hunting. You will see thousands of photographs of deer with non-lethal injuries. Some of them you can tell from the angle of the arrow coming straight down on their back. They were shot from a tree. Not killed them. Did not kill them. They take off running. The hunters say, "Oh yeah, we're going to go after them." Of course, they're going to say that. And with all due respect, taking a proficiency test on a non-moving, static, one-dimensional target is not the same as a three-dimensional moving animal when your heart's racing, perhaps not in such good weather, up in a tree. It's pretty well known on the internet, and I have read hunting groups, hunting chat rooms. Who do you think posts these pictures? 50%, about 50% are not killed. And that's what Matt told me 2 weeks ago. And I just want you to be sure that you talk to him, because he'll tell you that. Okay. Now, so we need some baseline data here. How do you know when the problem's solved? How do you know if you don't know how many collisions there are to start with? How do you know if it's getting better? I just don't trust anecdotal evidence. I don't trust, well, we think maybe there's fewer. Well, there aren't as many people complaining. If you have a small group of people making a lot of noise about their gardens and they haven't tried other alternatives, that's not scientific data. I'm sorry, but that's not a way to run a city council. That's not a way to pass ordinances. You need more baseline data. You need more scientific data. You need to know where you are when you start. How do you know when you're going to get, how do you know what the goal is? How do you know when you got there? All right, I just wanted to say that, again, based on what I experienced in my own 15 years of experience, that you can peacefully coexist with wildlife, but it requires patience, tolerance, and more importantly, creativity and a willingness to think outside the box. And don't just research what other towns in Iowa have done. Research what larger cities have done that are perhaps a little more progressive. I don't mean any disrespect here, but California is known for being extremely progressive when it comes to wildlife and animal issues. There are a lot of really creative solutions out there. And if you just think outside the box, I want you to show that Fairfield is really the progressive city that we claim to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir?
There's a little bit of time left. I'd just like to add a few points. My name is Simon Davis, and 500 South 3rd Street. And I'd like to address the ordinance for a moment. Up until a few days ago, there was actually no mention of the trial within the ordinance, and I'm grateful that this has now been updated, and there are 2 trial periods in 2 of the areas. I notice Area A is still open for hunting October through January, and maybe at some point Jessica or Michael could comment on this.
Yeah, that's the existing hunt in Jefferson County Park.
So these are, I understood it was a new area, the 3 areas considered.
No, A is an existing area. It's the city's portion. John Morrissey's is correct. It's the city's portion of that hunt that's been going for years. That's existing. That's unchanged by this ordinance.
Okay. So I'd like to suggest that maybe we even, as this ordinance is before the council, we might want to consider whether we have a trial in that area as well.
There's already a deer hunt in that area.
I know.
So it's beyond a trial. It's ongoing.
So one thing I want to mention about the ordinance, it's been updated, but there's no time limitation on the ordinance itself. So effectively, in terms of any future hunting dates beyond the trial periods, it'll be between the DNR and also the police to determine the length of those hunting periods. So the ordinance, if passed by the council, a new ordinance will not come before the council again for them to study this. So it's wide open between, if the DNR could say 12 months from now, we're going to have hunting in OB Nelson October through January. So I think we need to clean up the language a little bit on the ordinance and or be clear on what the city's intent is.
I have a question. I guess I'm misunderstanding what you're saying because there are specific dates for those two areas.
Correct.
And if we pass an ordinance that has those specific dates, once those dates are passed, this ordinance, as far as those two areas are concerned, is done. It's null and void. It's similar in the type of ordinance that we passed for Ragbri, where we had a specific date that these things were to take place on the day of Ragbri. Right. That ordinance is no longer in effect, and it didn't have to be repealed or modified or changed by the council after that point in time. So saying that the ordinance is written so that next year the DNR could say, you could have a hunt in these two areas isn't valid. I don't see how that is valid. Now, isn't that the case, John?
Simon, have you seen the ordinance?
I have seen the ordinance, and I also received an email from the attorney this afternoon.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that there are specific dates, 2014, 13, and 14.
Yeah, there are.
And then also, as Darren is describing, that is essentially the limits of the law. Those dates are part of the limits of the law. Yeah. So if we were to continue it, it would come back for another amendment, basically of dates allowing for it, and possibly different areas that would be recommended. So, but for what's being considered now, it's limited to the areas and those dates.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and that was my understanding of the intent of the council. However, in the email I received this afternoon from the city attorney's office, they were very clear that the DNR will determine future dates, and a new ordinance will not become before the city council.
A DNR would determine the times of the year in which hunting could occur. I think is probably what he was insinuating, John.
Yeah, it's not.
DNR sets the deer hunting season
exactly.
every year.
Yeah,
that's what he's referring to.
And deer hunting season year to year can fluctuate just a little. I mean, generally around the same amounts of
so they're not going to determine our policy.
No, okay. Simon, I
only
understand
the city council
these ordinances can be. I mean, it's somewhat legalese, and they are kind of hard to understand for a layman. There's nothing in here that allows the DNR or anyone but the city of Fairfield to allow hunting.
Okay.
Beyond what, these 4 days?
Beyond these 4 days, it's basically a termination of the ordinance.
Correct. Until reconsideration next season, or before next season.
Yeah, that's already ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not a termination. Essentially, if you're going to kind of modify it, you would do it again through the amendment process. You would go through this process again in a year. DNR would determine dates for bow hunting season. The council would consider whether they were going to continue and whether they were going to continue in those areas. But it would be by amendment. What the council is considering is only for what's specified in the language here.
Okay, it's good to clear up that point. I appreciate that. The other thing I want to mention is that it refers to the land south of O.B. Nelson as being one of the areas in the description, but actually the map shows that it's actually within O.B. Nelson Park. It's right adjacent to the open outdoor swimming pool, one of the areas, and the school on the other side, and the kids' playing ground on the other side of that.
School won't be in session, and it won't be in session on Saturday and Sunday. I grew up across the street from there. My mom still has the house.
Right.
I can tell you in the dead of winter, there's not one kid playing on that playground.
We'll have a discussion after the public hearing, Simon, about the areas. I want to make sure the council will check off on those 3 areas because we have had some concerns come up tonight. So we'll discuss that.
And one of the other areas was the middle school in Fairfield. And it's outlined on the map, and I was wondering, have you had a confirmation that this area will be used? Because it's within the school grounds.
We've had a verbal agreement that we can use that ground to hunt. Again, John Morrissey will draft an agreement that both the school will sign and the city will sign, specifying, limiting for the same weekends, sun up to sundown, and limiting to the people that Colin approves.
Okay.
And we will go before their board if this is approved.
Okay. Are there any other areas under consideration?
You saw all 3. The FIDA behind the middle school and Obie Nelson.
And
those 3 areas.
Now, there's also some church area, the Agape School.
No.
That's not going to happen?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I just want to mention, Council, I did download the Iowa City Deer Management Plan, and this may be the direction that we go, because I think if you determine that that the hunt is effective, there are parameters that are set based on data. So I think that I have some copies here for everyone to review. I'll give it to the committee to review also if you haven't already. But again, not just simply setting the parameters for a hunt like this, but actually having a policy that's based on data that you can reflect on to determine when to utilize a hunt. It will entail counting deer, and I think we want the DNR's assistance in doing that. I'm certain that we can accomplish that.
So what other type of data?
Well, we don't need to discuss it now, but I'll go ahead and provide this, and then that can actually be reviewed before the next meeting as well. Okay. See if there's something more that can be done. Any others that wish to address the public hearing portion? Okay. Yes. And I'm sorry, then I'll have to.
Derek Wolfcool, the Park and Rec Director. I haven't seen the ordinance, but if you were to allow a hunt in one of the parks, I would recommend that the park be closed during the time frame of the hunt. I can make that recommendation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would recommend that whenever a hunt is going on in a park, that we recommend closing the park during that time frame.
Okay, I think that's wise. Thank you, Derek. Okay, yeah. Well, if you please come up, because we're on camera. We want to make sure everyone can hear. Thanks.
I think that was a good suggestion, Your Honor. And also, let's remind folks that this is a very short amounts of time these hunts are even to be allowed. Very few days. I don't remember the exact number.
4 days, Saturday, Sunday.
Thank you.
Okay. On 2 different weekends.
I thought you were. Well, I just wanted to mention, maybe I misunderstood, but someone brought up about Keokuk, that they were no longer having a hunt. In the 2013-2014, the newest edition here, Keokuk is listed as having an urban hunt, city hunt, September 14th through January 19th. They're issuing 150 antlerless licenses in Keokuk.
Okay, thank you.
Latest book.
Okay. Any others that wish to comment? Okay, we'll declare the public hearing closed. I'm sorry. What? Yes, then come up. Come up.
Okay, my name is Susan Chapin, 204 Wilson Boulevard. I came in quite unprepared. I just read about it in the Reader, so I don't have any great remarks prepared, but I do want to underline Nikki's remarks, because she has had, 15, 20 years of experience? And I want to underline it because usually to learn something, you have to hear something 5 to 10 times to really get it inside and kind of keep it there. And I'm wondering if the City Council has talked about using scarecrows, using water spray, the coyote or mountain lion urine. Have you ever discussed that? And if not, please do. I mean, thinking outside of the box is a great idea. I think this town is a more creative town than most. It's a more progressive town than most. And I want to add one more phrase, and it's a more spiritual town than most. So perhaps Fairfield could step out of their own box and not imitate Keokuk or whatever else is going on, but imitate themselves and have a little higher purpose or goal. And also there's a charm of this city, which is nothing else compares to, at least in Iowa, I'm sure other places. But so stay unique and try something creative. I mean, wouldn't it be cool to see a lot of scarecrows, or let's market this water spray idea or the urine and have news stories about that? Maybe other communities can learn from those trial measures. And the last thing, last night on TV on PBS, there was a program. I don't know exactly the title of it because I came in the middle of it, but I've seen it before. It's called Unusual Animal Friends. Did anyone see it? It's kind of this combination of, well, in this particular case, when I turned on the TV, it was about a dog and a deer. They were absolute bonded friends. They played together. The mother dog had a baby fawn suckle on it. I guess it must have lost its mother. I wonder why. I wonder how. Somewhere along the line. And the fawn suckled on this dog, and this female dog took care of it. And it was really sweet. And I'm sure PBS usually replays their shows a few times in a month, although it's getting toward the end of the month. But it's, combinations of animal pairs you'd never imagine seeing before. But the point is all of us have had dogs and cats as pets, right? And I happen to have a cockatiel bird. And I've had cats and dogs as pets before. And a lot of us will maintain that our animals have souls. When the child loses their baby dog, when the child is like 5 or 6 and a dog gets run over by a car, they're going to ask mom or dad, will that dog go to heaven? And of course mom and dad's going to answer yes, for the most part. And I happen to believe that birds have souls, because I know I could probably talk for 2 hours about that.
All right, we're keep your limited comments to deer,
okay.
please.
So I just wanted, and I'm not going to.
We're not hunting birds.
No, I know, but I sometime might want to take that issue up about birds, and particularly about the cats killing birds in this town. But I do just want to emphasize that people kind of have a mentality that only pets could have souls. Only pets. Only our beloved cat and dog. But guess what? I think it goes well beyond that. And if you look at that PBS video and other videos, in fact, I think you can see it online about these unusual pet pairs. You might change your heart. Okay. And that's what I'm asking you to do.
Thank you for your comments. And also for underscoring the good suggestions that Ms. Weaver gave the committee tonight as well. Are there any other comments before we close the public hearing? Okay.
My name is Michiel Bunder. I live on 305 South D Street. We have about an acre. It's about 5 blocks from here. We have a lot of deer problems. They eat everything we plant, all the fruit trees, every imaginable plant that we put, they eat. So now we have about 50 cages, caging every single shrub, fruit tree. We fenced a vegetable yard. This spring we had 2 fawns being born in our backyard. Very cute. We really love them, like the lady said. They're very sweet animals. We're vegetarian. We would never hunt. And yet we feel in favor of the deer hunt, because there clearly is an overpopulation and it has become virtually impossible to do any kind of growing in town without putting up a 6-foot fence. And that means if everybody would do that, the entire neighborhood would be fenced. There would be 6-foot fences lining all the properties. It seems to be ridiculous to have that kind of situation. I didn't hear much about Lyme disease, but some people are concerned about their children getting hit by an arrow in this very short trial. I would be more concerned about my kids getting Lyme disease because they play in the backyard that have infected ticks. And I would suggest that there's some kind of a data gathered about the risks of that and how that would be reduced, so we can measure the human cost versus the cost in deer lives. And I had a question about if a hunter stands on a 20-foot stand and has to shoot an arrow down to kill a deer, and the arrow is not fatal, and the deer runs off, how can the hunter possibly make a fatal shot without getting off the stand and chasing the deer out of the zone where the hunt is limited to? That seems not to be possible.
I just think we have to have our expert address that, Colin, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, there's really no other way to address it than say, you know, if a deer runs out of the chances that the deer is going to run out of the 2-acre area at O.B. Nelson Park is really, really good. I mean, if you want us to recover the deer, we're going to have to track it into town more than likely.
And you have the right, according to DNR, to do it as long as you don't have your weapon with you when you retrieve the deer.
That's right.
So what is that going to look like?
What is that
going to look like? What's that scenario going to look like if it happens? What's going to be the protocol? Are the police going to get involved? Is the hunter going to call the police? And
it would be up to the hunter to. I mean, it's always up to the hunter to track a wounded animal.
But as far as we're talking about wooded areas right now. If it goes into a residential area, what are we instructing the hunters to do at that point?
They'll probably end up getting in their pickup truck.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to write something up where they do notify the police department. But I mean, if you want the deer recovered and it runs into somebody's backyard.
Well, of course we want it recovered, but we want to have a clear policy.
They'd be calling their buddy to come with a pickup truck and retrieve the deer. Is usually how it's done.
I mean, typically you're going to see one hunter get behind on the blood trail, and he's going to follow the blood trail, and he's probably going to call someone who's going to make his larger sweep on a street that's near there in the same direction that the deer ran, so that it's a quicker process and it doesn't take all day. But typically on a wounded deer, you can tell from the color of the blood how far you have to go, and you can make a decision about, okay, what do I need to do here? Correct. I think in some instances they may contact us, wouldn't you think, if they felt like that there was going to be a long run involved. But I mean, I think 9 times out of 10, when you either bow hunting or gun hunting, probably a little less for gun, but with bow hunting, you're not going much more than 150, 100 yards away from
if you make a good shot. Yeah.
Exactly, a reasonable shot.
Right, and 90% of the time, the deer is going to run for the thickest cover it can find, and that's not going to be in somebody's backyard.
They're going to try to find somewhere to seek cover.
Okay. Thank you, Colin, and thanks for your comments. Yes.
I'm both in sympathy with
your name and address, please.
Joseph Boxer in 2060 Emerald. So I'm both in sympathy with people whose yards are being predated by deer, as well as people who feel that deer are a graceful part of our environment that should be preserved. And so there should be non-lethal methods for defending one's property against predators like deer. And so I was just turning this over in my mind. There are probably many ways, but one way might be something like this. Everyone is already familiar with motion sensors, and there are motion sensors that turn on lights. There are motion sensors, for instance, that protect you. If a garage door is coming down and you walk in the way of it, then the garage door will go back up. So one possibility might be to install motion sensors on the property that are electrically activated and that combine various devices that would scare a deer away. One might be that a light starts flashing. Another might be that a deer whistle, such as are mounted on cars, is combined with some sort of blower so that when the electricity is activated, the blower goes on and blows through the deer whistle, and that creates a painful situation that would make the deer run away. So I think this is just one, but I think there's a lot of creativity in this city, and that it could be possible to come up with ways to have non-lethal methods. They could, let's say, involve using the scent of wolves or other things that could be used. And the other thing is that there's one assumption, and that is that killing a deer is going to eliminate the possibility of other deer coming in and also be predators. So I don't actually know statistically that actually killing a deer is going to prevent other deer from coming to that same property.
Thank you for your comments.
Sir, I can address the motion light, because I have a motion light that my neighbor has kindly asked me to turn off, because I have a motion light on the back in my backyard, and the deer. I have 6 deer in my backyard. The deer come in because they want to eat my neighbor's acorns and both of our gardens. It goes on and off, and she said it's literally all night long, like somebody's flipping her bedroom light on and off. That's how long. So I don't turn on my security light. It has no effect on the deer. They're usually at my house from 2 to 6 o'clock in the morning.
But then combining with a whistle idea or some other, maybe it's a spray.
Okay. So Joe, and we did have a presentation on some devices that do use motion sensors to distract the deer using water. I think so. That I think was a good suggestion that we had gotten as well. Any others? Yes.
Mark Bell, 607 South Main Street. So this scarecrow thing has been mentioned several times, and I have a scarecrow, and you can buy it on Free Cycle. It is 100% effective when it's turned on and the battery's charged, but it doesn't discriminate. It'll spray the dog, it'll spray the owner, it'll spray the neighbor, it'll spray the deer, it'll spray everything. So you have to turn it off if you want to use your yard, let your animal out, mow, whatever. So as soon as you turn it off and then forget to turn it on, the next morning the garden is gone. And that's also 100% effective too. So the scarecrow is a great idea, but it only works when it's turned on, and it's not always going to be turned on if you ever go out of your house. So it's a great idea. But
requires a hose, which would obviously not work in winter.
Right, yeah, it's a summertime, warm weather thing only. So.
Well, there's not too many roses in there.
Okay, this isn't a debate dialogue. We're listening to people.
Free Cycle if you want to buy a scarecrow. Look my name up.
Hi, I just want one more comment to make. Christine Boxman, 2060 Emerald Lane. Touching again on what Diane said about deterrence. We have crop dusters. Is it possible to get a crop duster modified and fill it with predator's urine and spray over those areas?
And I'm going to ask everyone to respect everyone's comments at the microphone, please, and withhold your laughter or comments. I think this is a public hearing where everybody's point of view is welcome.
Thank you. You are going to close the areas before the hunters go in to kill the deer. So if you close those areas and you get a sprayer and you spray the urine, which will go over everything, that will deter the deer from coming to those areas. It seems to me to be cost effective, and it's a win-win situation.
Okay, thank you very much. I think there'll be further opportunities to share ideas with the committee. At this time, I'll declare the public hearing closed. And Council, what I'd like you to consider are the elements of the ordinance if you are going to move this forward in terms of the areas. There have been concerns raised about the small area behind in Obie Nelson. We've had a recommendation from our Park and Recreation Director to close that park as well. Obviously, there's some concern there. So as far as the areas that are proposed at this point, are there any
They
concerns?
fit well within the parameters set out by the DNR and by other cities who conduct urban deer hunts.
I guess I would prefer to make sure we close Obie Nelson Park and the dog park, just because it is a smaller area. That'd be my preference.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So I'd like to see that actual amendment in the ordinance.
Okay,
So
I'll make that.
And again, I think, if there's any other discussion prior to any action the council wishes to take, we can take it at that time. But
okay.
Yeah, thanks. Any other reactions or discussion?
A few points, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments, and that is, I want to say I really appreciate Nikki's comments, and she is a good resource, and we do need to use her. For one of these suggestions about plant food plots and hunting, first of all, you can't bait the deer and then draw them in and then kill them. So that's off the table.
It's illegal.
Some of the other things like contraception or the other things that we talked about last year that Nikki brought up, about the little sound things that's possibly there's grants. The city has to decide. There's a difference between what's the responsibility of the city and what's the responsibility of the homeowner. And it's not the city's responsibility to go into people's backyards and finance a scarecrow for people. I think it's great. We need to do more education, and we have people in our community that can really help us do that, and we need to do that. There's no question. Regarding any other thing like contraception or whatever, please put hard numbers to that. Bring it to the safety committee. The council will be, budgeting in January, February timeframe. If any of those are appropriate for the city to do, it can be considered, and now's the appropriate time to do it. But we need hard numbers, and we need facts, and the possibility of grants. We need, is that possible? So, and again, we have to distinguish between what's our responsibility and what's the homeowner's responsibility. So I think even after hearing tonight, I'm very appreciative of some of the ideas that are coming. I think we need to do all of them. And an education component is important for our community, because a deer hunt on one end of the town, again, is not necessarily going to help the north end or the east end. So, anyway, I'll be quiet.
Okay. Thank you, Connie. The comments?
Just a little bit about the asking for hard data. Chief, we talked about this before in committee about a year ago, that it's difficult for your department to provide exact figures. Yeah.
If there's not a personal injury involved, then we give them a form and they turn it in directly to their insurance company. We don't investigate it. So to say we're refusing to give hard numbers, we don't have hard numbers. They come in, they say, I hit a deer, wherever they hit it, we give them a form and out the door they go. If they do that, or they go to the DNR office, pick it up, or the state tower and pick up those forms. We can't just say.
So you're not making a record, Chief. You're simply giving them a form that they're going to turn into their insurance, or their
insurance. They fill it out themselves.
Okay.
Yes. And 90% of the time, we're not even called to the scene. If they say they hit it at, Gear and 12th Street, okay, that's for you and your insurance to work out, not us.
Well, anybody who's had this discussion in their office in the last couple of weeks, because this has come up, have all told stories about hitting deer. How many in this room have hit a deer in or outside of Fairfield? Quite a majority.
The deer hit me.
I've hit 2, 3. So yeah, generally it's more than one. There's no question that that as a traffic nuisance, it's quite serious. And there are certainly, if you drive those same places each day, you're very sensitive and very heightened. But if you've hit a deer, it's something that appeared last minute in your field of vision. There was little that you could do to avoid it. But it is a very serious problem nationally. It does cause $1 billion worth of property damage and kills 200 people a year. Any other discussion? I know this is the first.
Just the last thing. The committee, obviously, we're not experts in wildlife, so we turn to experts. We turn to the Department of Natural Resources in Iowa and ask them for their expert opinion. I've had numerous email and phone call and in-person conversations with the wildlife predation expert, and trust his judgment. I know it's fine if a citizen says that they know more than him and it's an opinion, but for me to sit on this council having been elected by the people to protect their interest, I'm more comfortable following a DNR policy. I've heard about, and I've talked to him extensively about these non-lethal options, coyote urine. Not sure exactly how coyote urine is collected. It's something thought about, but I don't know if we could collect enough to put in an airplane and disperse airily. It's possible, but so I run all these ideas by who I consider to be the expert in Iowa for deer. And he says, blatant, I'll just say what he told us. We manage deer by killing them. That's how it's done, and that's the most effective means. And it's might sound cruel, but that's the nature of these animals. They used to have predators who would limit their population. We have removed them. To say that humans are outside of that cycle, again, is an opinion. If human hunters want to take these animals and use them as for food or whatever, that's part of the natural cycle. That would actually bring more balance to the situation. So, yeah, none of this stuff, we didn't make this up. We're not pro hunt specifically. We just want to do what has been proven to be most effective.
Okay, then I end the discussion there and entertain a motion. If you'd like to pass from the first to the second reading, there will be two other readings, I'm sorry, after this evening at our next two meetings.
I would make it a motion to move from the first to the second reading.
Moved by Hamilton, second by Rasmussen. Any other discussion? Now, please call the roll.
Do we want to put in about closing Obie Nelson Park?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
I'd like to make a friendly amendment
Okay,
that
friendly
Obie
amendment
Nelson Park and the dog park are closed
You'll
during
accept
the
that?
days.
I accept that friendly amendment.
Thank you. As amended, please call the roll.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Rasmussen.
Yes.
Ledger Kalin.
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Boyer.
Yes.
Hammes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I want to thank everyone for their comments this evening and for a balanced discussion. Next, council will move to mayor's report. I have a committee appointment for the Fairfield Media group, and they are replacing Mike Ragonia with a board seat, recommending Werner Elmker, who has been very involved as a photographer and videographer in the community, and I think will lend a lot to the FPAC board as we know it.
Move to approve.
Moved by Hallie.
Second.
Second by Hammes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Council, I also just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the fact that, as you're aware, we have what we refer to as the SURF program that'll be on a ballot next Tuesday, and that is our Capital Improvement Reserve Fund. This is a special levy that we've used over the past 10 years for street improvement. It has a maximum of 67.5 cents. The city passed it in 1999. It sunsetted in 2009. It was not renewed at that time just because it wasn't brought to the attention of the council at that time. But those, the dollars are what we use for our street repair. The full 67.5 cents will raise about $200,000 annually. And again, there are very few sources of revenue that we have for street repair. Everyone knows how important that is. So this levy, again, which was at one time passed by the voters, did expire. We're going to ask the voters again on Tuesday to approve this full levy of 67.5 cents, of which we have the discretion in a year's period of time to use the full amount or not, depending on, as you know, there were years where we did some advanced borrowing, some bonding, and during those years we don't necessarily need to draw those SURF dollars at that point in time. But in the years where we don't have those large amounts to put towards our street improvements, those are very important because, again, the only way that we are able to keep up. So I wanted to mention it to everyone. We'll try and get a little media on that this week as well, so that the voters are educated on what it is we're asking them to renew on the ballot and how we utilize those dollars. So if you get any questions, please answer them to your constituents as well. That's everything I have, so we'll move to our committee and board reports. Environmental and Franchise Committee. Darren?
Yeah. We were
I'm sorry, Michael.
Yeah, sorry. We met last week. It was a joint meeting with the newly formed Arbor Committee. Just talking about the urban tree plan. Basically, we're moving forward, addressing the emerald ash borer situation. Looks like we're going to apply for a Trees Forever grant to help replant Central Park and Obie Nelson Park next spring. Half the trees on Central Park are ash, and about 75% or more at Obie Nelson are ash. We won't be taking down any large trees. We're just going to replant, and then as they get infested and die, then they'll be taken down. The only point I wanted to make was just that this committee, the Environment Committee and the Arbor Committee, both are recommending not to use the insecticidal injections that some people use on this, because they're so indiscriminate. If you inject these trees to save them from ash borer, you're also going to kill any bees or birds or any other insect or any beneficial organism that comes in contact with that underbark. So it can also seep into the ground. There's some insecticides that are actually applied to the ground. Again, it's kind of a dead zone around those trees. So for that reason, that's kind of maybe the first phase of our public announcement to basically, it's again private property. If someone wants to use something like that on an ash tree, they can, but we would recommend not. We're recommending replanting, essentially, is the direction we're moving in. There's a EAB educational event in Burlington. Burlington is also infested with EAB. That's on November 14th. So Scott, Tim, and I will be there. They want us to talk about our plan because, according to the state office of the DNR, they like what Fairfield's doing. They view us as a model in terms of how to address a situation like this. So we'll go and speak to other communities who will be there about our activities. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. Now, Darren, what's the Utility Committee?
Our committee met prior to the council meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. We had on our agenda several items, the first of which I will address is the Libertyville Road sewer extension discussion. We had asked the city engineers to review and do a cost estimate of what it would take to install sanitary sewers on both the north side and the south side of Libertyville Road along the south side of our city. A copy of those estimates are in front of you here. There are three phases to this project. Total cost of the project would be in or near $600,000. Each phase has a different amount. North of Libertyville Road, we're projecting that it would be $315,000 to provide sewer service, a sewer main with easements to those property owners, $204,000 for the properties on the south side of Libertyville Road to provide the same thing, sewer line easements, and then also providing sewer line to the area where the Christian church is at, across from the hospital on South Main and off to the direction of the new development that will be going on over there. We haven't made a complete determination as to whether this is the direction we're going to move. We would like to believe that this would be beneficial to the city from the standpoint that from a survey of the neighbors in the area, there were more in favor of having this type of system available to them, and that they would be willing to voluntarily annex into the city than against that idea. So I think that at this time we're really not calling for any action, but we wanted to supply some numbers and data to the council so they could have some time to look at consideration on this. There is a deadline that really needs to be kept in mind, that some of the property owners have been given 18 months to repair, replace, or improve their current septic system. And if we were to do this, we would need to try to have it done within that 18-month time period. Those property owners that are out there that have recently installed new systems because they have been required to by the county sanitarian would be considered to allow those systems to go through their lifespan before they would be required to attach to a new sewer system out there. But a tap would be available to them to do that. The next item, we had asked our city attorney and also the city administrator to look into a utility financial assistance fund that could be operated by the city. Unfortunately, there is no program similar to that in the state of Iowa by any city or municipality. And the cities that have investigated that, such as Des Moines, they had tried to look at implementing a program like this, found that it is really not within state law or guideline to be able to function in that way as a entity to give back money to a property owner or someone that needs assistance in that way. It's a grant program, but it would need to be administered by a private organization, a charitable organization, a 501c3, possibly a new item for the Jefferson County Foundation to look at as a pass-through. If we could encourage someone to be able to work that direction so that a homeowner could make a donation to this that in turn would be tax deductible for them, and then the governing body would then review applications for those grants to go back to people here in the community that have a need for that.
Good. John, can I ask you a question? Can we set the guidelines for that?
We can partner with anybody. We just can't give away city money without either it being a 401 economic development type of purpose or something associated with a TIF or something else. But we can work with a private group and certainly input as far as, adopting an ordinance as far as the standards or something like that.
We wouldn't have the ability to mandate or to demand or to, we'd be asking for inclusions.
No, in other words, I just mean guidelines. For instance, if we were to set the guidelines for income levels, things like that, for people to qualify for an assistance fund.
You could say policies in the same range that as school lunch program, something like that.
In terms of a partnership,
the city would have some sort of hand in what goes on with this, because in a sense what it is it's a way to assist a citizen here in the community from something that the city has created in the first place.
Right. But if we're setting guidelines, approving applications just based on meeting those guideline requirements, and then ensuring the charity that the money that they'll be dispersing is something that meets our guidelines. Is that the kind of relationship we can have?
Well, I would think that we could give the charity the guidelines, but as far as approval and determining how those grants are dispersed, that would still have to be up to the charity.
There's a public and there's a private, and that organization decided to set the rules of the road that we wanted. They would be doing so out of choice. There is no way that we could actually set those guidelines.
Correct. So we could set them as recommended guidelines.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Anything else, Aaron?
I have a couple more items here. one of which was another one that isn't going to be actionable at this time, but it discusses utility connections and meters per building versus occupancy. Recently, there was a duplex constructed here in the city. They came in for tax abatement paperwork, and it was discovered that they had their electric metered separately. They wanted their water metered separately, but they only had one service line for the water going into the building. So what happens is, if apartment A pays their water bill and is fine, everything goes along great, apartment B doesn't, and the city needs to turn off the water because of non-payment, you're unable to do that. Currently, our ordinance has just one line per building. If the ordinance was to be modified to have it state that it would be one line per occupancy, buildings that are 2 or more in occupancy would have to have separate water lines, which would mean separate stop boxes for each one of the occupants on the property. Then there would be the ability to go out and turn off the water for apartment A and not for apartment B, because apartment A hasn't been paying and apartment B has. So we're going to look at that in the future. We're also going to review our policy that we have right now concerning lawn meters. We would like to fold that into the ordinance so that we have a more stringent guideline to follow as to how a lawn meter can be used and billed for, so that we wouldn't run into problems with inappropriate use of that meter. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is the reimbursement item. You'll find also in the information that we passed out to the council members that there was a lawn meter installed inappropriately. Not inappropriately, it was installed incorrectly at a home at 308 East Fillmore Avenue. It was also installed under supervision of city forces at that time in 2005. The meter was provided by the city, but it really wasn't verified how it was put into place. What happened is that the water main comes into the home. You have 3 feet or less to where your meter is installed for your home. The plumbing that was done for this was done after the home's meter, so that the water that ran through the meter coming into the house then went to another location and ran through the meter for the lawn watering. So the resident was being billed for water and sewer usage twice for both meters. How the sewer usage would work was that if the meter that was being used for watering was turned on, that water came through the first meter, which is your meter that gauges your sewer. And so it's kind of complex in trying to explain it, but it was basically an erroneous connection. So it was determined that since we had no real guideline and our current water superintendent wasn't in his position at that time, he went through and reviewed all the bills for that particular property from the time in 2005, I think it was May of 2005, to now, and applied the rates that went along with those time periods for both water and sewer, and came up with the numbers that are shown here, also including the tax. That total amount would be $2,893.85, and it's the recommendation of the committee to the council that we have the council approve a credit back to the homeowner on their bill of that amount, and also ensure that the meter is reinstalled correctly.
Okay. There a motion to approve, make that approval?
I would make that a motion.
Moved by Hamilton,
Second.
second by Ledger Kalen.
Just a quick question. Is this more of an internal policy issue with the department? I mean, does the council have to make a vote for them to handle this kind of thing?
Yes, I think we do in this case because this is different from any other case that's come before us. This is a situation where I think the city is culpable in one way with what has happened with this meter. And Carl has gone above and beyond by tracking every single month billing from 2005 and reapplying the rates that were at those points in time rather than just saying, okay, this is the rate today and coming back with it. I think he's done a very good job and his due diligence in this.
So Carl, you'll feel better with the council vote then?
Carl brought it to myself, and I felt like it was something that I should bring to the committee and that the committee should bring to the council because my obvious response was going to be no. And given that my response is going to be no because I don't feel like I can legally make that call, we wound up with the chairman committee handling it to begin with and then bringing it to entire council. The only legal decision that can be made on that level, I think the chairman would agree, would be that the overall council make that decision.
And the property owners are in agreement that they would accept it as credit back on their bill rather than a cash or check payment to them for this reimbursement.
And Carl, our discovery is that this was our mistake, correct?
I have to assume that, yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't know who
We don't have any.
installed the meter, but
Right.
apparently we installed the meter.
Right, because in general, when we have these kinds of requests come before us, we're not looking to set precedent based on something that the homeowner didn't know. This is something that they could not have been aware of, and
the only way they became aware of it was they had absolutely low water pressure. They'd turn on a faucet and it came out as a trickle. They called the water department. We sent out a man to investigate what was going on. We found out that there was a leak in the system after the lawn watering meter where it was going out of the house. They repaired that, closed it all up, and then found, retracing the line back in to try to turn it off, that it was on the wrong side of the main meter coming into the house.
Yeah, my only concern is just that when we have these large refunds that come before us, generally we're concerned about the precedent-setting nature of it, and usually it's not on us, it's on the homeowner. We're saying in this case that it's really on us.
Your Honor, I think it suffices to say in short that I do believe there's some measure of culpability that rests with us here. And I don't believe it's even that in that measure of culpability is only the past thing that's been happening here with the water. I think it's also in our inspections process. Here again, we're going back to the planning aspect of this. No one inspected that installation to make sure that it was correct. We had some involvement that there's some of that immediate culpability, but also in the protocols of our processes, that there's some culpability in that. And of course, we're talking about repairing that, not beating a dead horse. Every time something like this comes up, I like to just remind everybody that a lot of the times it's proper planning, or the lack thereof, that can get you in these positions.
That's a good point. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Ledger Kalen?
Yes.
Hallie?
Yes.
Boyer?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Hamas?
Yes. Thank you. And council, if there isn't any other business, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Hamilton.
Second.
Second by Boyer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those, and council, we are meeting adjourned.